Okay, good afternoon everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's Lunch and Learn session, Optimising your configuration. If you have any questions as we go along, please do enter them in the Q&A box and we'll answer as many of them as we can at the end. For any that we don't get to, or if we need further clarity on them, we'll be sharing an FAQ in the follow-up email, which will be with you in the next few days. I'm now going to hand you over to Michael Corrance, who is Training and Optimisation Consultant here at EMIS Health, and he's going to take you through today's presentation. Over to you, Michael.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. As Heather mentioned, my name is Michael Corrance, Training and Optimisation Consultant. I may have met a few of you before. Today, we're going to be looking at how we can go about optimising some of our functionality within EMIS Web. So there's three main areas we're going to have a look at. And what they're going to be are removing users. So removing users in EMIS Web is something which, when I go into practices and see you guys, something that's always brought up. There's always some issues around removing them, whether it's finding them outstanding tasks, whether it's finding the appointment sessions that are outstanding. And we'll take a look at how we can really easily and quickly get these users removed. We're going to look at some of the appointment book optimization and things we can do to make working with the appointment book a lot slicker and a lot smarter for you guys. So that includes things like slot types and embargoes and how we can use them to create some really intuitive reports. And finally, we'll take a look at registration workflow, mainly focusing on our duplicate patients. And we'll look at how we can manage these in a really efficient way and make sure they're resolved in a timely manner. So for the rest of this presentation, it's going to be a live demo. Like was mentioned by Heather, if you have any questions as we go through, feel free to put them in the Q&A box and we'll get to them at the end if we have the time there. So I'm just going to switch into EMIS Web. Now, the first thing we're going to look at, as mentioned, is removing users. And how we can go about doing this in a really precise manner. So we've all been there before when we go up to our EMIS ball and to organization configuration. And a user has left the organization and we need to remove them off the system. So let's find our user. It's going to be my alter ego, Mikey Corrance this time. And there's Mikey Corrance. So in an ideal world, we just come up to the top, click deactivate, and the user would disappear. However, as you can see here, we've got some outstanding issues which we need to clear up before we can remove that user. So it might be a case that you have one or all of these issues. The ones I have is that this user has some patients assigned to them as a usual GP. They also have some outstanding appointment sessions, and they also have outstanding tasks. So first and foremost, let's look at the tasks. Now, if the user has any outstanding tasks, we can't remove them from the system because there may be important information that needs to be dealt with within them tasks. So what I can do, I can edit the user and I can add myself or a colleague as a deputy for that user's tasks. What that means is when I have access to that specific user's tasks and can view just their tasks alone in Workflow Manager. So if I click on out of office settings within our edit user, you can see here at the bottom I've got manage deputies. So from here, if I click add and search for myself, so Michael Corrance this time, it'll add me in as a deputy and it'll choose all of the different modules from Workflow Manager which I'll be able to deputize for. So I could untick specific ones, but in this instance, we need them all ticked. We're going to check all them inboxes to make sure all them tasks are completed. If I press OK now, that's now added me as a deputy and I can navigate into Workflow Manager and look for this outstanding task or tasks. The way I do this is up at the top left corner, we have Workflow View. And you can see now I have a list of names below. These are all the people that I deputize for. So the difference between these and the global tasks is that these will show me this specific user's tasks that are assigned to that user. So if I go into tasks, you'll see here I've got 3 tasks in the to-do list. There's a couple of ways I could deal with these. I could click on the first task and I could change the owner. And what that actually do is assign that to a completely different user. disappears from Mikey Corrance's list. I could also complete the tasks, or in certain circumstances, you may want to delete the tasks. So let's complete that one there. And again, I have access to this user's tasks throughout the whole of workflow. Some tasks are assigned to the practice as a whole. So things like your new registrations. And they don't need to be completed. It's just tasks that are specifically assigned to that user. So if I go back to organization configuration now, and I go to deactivate that user, you'll see the first bullet point for tasks is gone. And now I only have the patients and reassigning the appointment sessions. With the patients, there's a couple of ways we can go about doing it. It's always done through registration. And at the top of the screen here, we have usual GP reallocation. Let's just clear this patient off the bar. There we go. And this allows you to transfer patients from one usual GP to another. Now, it might be this case that this user has a huge amount of patients and you want to split them up. So what we can do is go to our reporting module on population reporting. And we can create a report which shows us which patients are registered to this specific user. I'm just going to add a new report on currently registered patients. And in our rules, we'll create the new rule of patient details. And the criteria is right down the bottom here, the usual GP. And we just search for the clinician. If we save and run that report now, it's going to give us a good figure on how many patients are currently registered to that user. We have 417. And if we created an auto report from that as well, this will then give us a nice tidy report which will list all of the patients in alphabetical order, so we can transfer them patients over to different clinicians. You can export this file into an Excel and tidy it up a bit if needs be. So let's go back into our registration module and we're going to reallocate these patients. So single click, it'll pop up with the usual GP reallocation box. We've got two drop downs. The first one is the trading partner. Should always be one option in there for you. And the donating GP is who these patients are coming from. So in this instance, it's Mikey Corrance. We then have the recipient GP and the surname start and end patterns. So when you transfer patients in EMIS Web, it's always by the surname pattern. So you can transfer patients from A to C to one clinician, from C to F to another clinician, and so on. So in this example, the local recipient is going to be David Stables. And I'm going to transfer all of the patients, so A to Z. If I just wanted to transfer the A to C, I'd just type in the surname end pattern of C, and then I'd need to choose the next recipient for the next batch of patients. So let's just change that to Z. I'm just going to remove that last row. And I can press OK on there. And it will do the GPR allocation in the background. So you don't need to sit around and wait for that to happen. It'll just happen in the background for you. So let's go back to organization config and we'll check to see how this is coming along. Go up to deactivate and we've got one left now. So this is the user's outstanding appointment sessions. So far we've removed the tasks, we've reallocated the patients, and now we'll have a look for these appointment sessions. So I'm going to go to the appointment book. And there's a couple of ways we could do this. So the first way is I could use the quick pick menu on the left. I could bring up Mikey Corrance in here. And I could click through to try and find these appointment sessions. It could take a while. Another way, and a lot of a quicker way of finding when these sessions are that we need to remove, would be to use appointment reporting at the top of the screen here. If I give that a click and add from the top left corner, we get two options, a slot report or a session report. So what we're looking for at the moment is sessions that belong to this user in the future. So I'm going to select a session report. We need to give the report a name. So MC sessions will do. And from the left, we pick our filter data. So this is telling the system what we actually want to see come back in this report. So I can add a filter, and we're looking for the session holder being Mikey Corrins. If I left it at this and ran, it would bring me back every session they've ever ran. So ideally, we want to add another filter for the session start date. And then we get a similar box to our search function where we can go after or on the search date. Now, the difference between this and a search is that we also build the report in here under report format. Okay, if I tried to save and run now, it wouldn't allow me to because we need to create the report while we create the search. So in our columns, so along the top of the screen, I just want the session start date. And down the left, I'm not too bothered. We could have the clinician name if you were doing this for multiple clinicians, but for this instance, we'll just have the one. And we can save and run. I'm just going to click to a different folder and come back. And view results. And there we go. It lists all of the different sessions that this user has. I have on the 10th, the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, and the 14th of August. So now I can go back into our appointment book. I can navigate to the 10th of August. And I can right click and cancel or reassign the session. And I can do the same on the 12th, 13th. We'll just box all these off. So now I'll just quickly close this report I created. We should be able to go back into our configuration and deactivate our user. So through that, we've gone through and removed all the tasks that were outstanding for the user. We've removed the patients who were assigned to the user, and we've removed the appointments that were all assigned in three quite simple ways. So the second part that we wanted to look at was the appointment book. So the appointment book in EMIS Web is a really powerful tool, which is sometimes underutilized in certain areas. Let's navigate into our appointment book. And we'll just go back to today's date. So within our appointment book, we have loads of different options for you to customize and be able to use the appointment book. And one of the most powerful we have is slot types. Now, slot types within the appointments configuration option on the ribbon and on the left-hand side can be configured with different colors and icons and make the appointment book really stand out. So you can make it very visceral and have a really quick look and see what appointments are available. Another thing you can do with slot types is create some really strong reports and give you a good idea of how many types of sessions are being utilized, whether you need to increase or decrease availability. And you can see in here, we've got quite a few. We also have embargoes on the left. Now, embargoes allow you to lock down slots for a specific time so that they're not released until that exact moment. So for example, in here, we've got same day at 8 AM. So maybe you've got urgent slots that you only open on the day. And we can just add embargoes from the top of the screen here. So let's say we wanted one that opened up on the same day at 12 o'clock. If I type the 12 rather than a 10, that might help. There we go. So we'd say 0 days before and 12 o'clock. And we can give it specific slot colors if they're embargoed and things. So an embargo already exists with that value. So let's try 13. There we go. And same day at 1. What that means now is when we create our slot types, you can assign an embargo to the slot type by default. So whenever that's put in, it'll embargo that slot. The second thing slot types allow you to do, as I mentioned, is to create some really powerful reports to give you a better idea of how many appointments are being utilized. Now, again, with our appointment reporting tool at the top of the screen here, I mentioned before we had two types of search. We had the slot report and the session report. In this instance, if I go for slot report, I know we have a slot for COVID. So maybe I could take a look at a search which displays to me how many COVID slots we had available, how many we used, and how many patients DNA'd, all in one report. So in our filter data, I'm going to add a filter for slot type, and it displays all of our slot types we have available. I'm going to select COVID. And that's all we want to know. So anything in the past, that's COVID. The report format, so this is where we can decide what we want it to show. So on the columns, so along the top of the screen, let's say appointment date. And in our rows down the left, we can have multiple criteria here. So we could have, let's see if I can find it. There we are, slot properties and availability. So how many were made available. And also we could have a row in there for slot properties and DNA. So it'll tell us how many people actually DNA'd them appointments. We can add totals in there, so it gives us a running total throughout. And you can also add a schedule onto this. So you can have this run daily or weekly automatically for you. So you just pop in and out to view that. So I'll run it every 1 week on a Monday. And we'll save and run. Oh. Need to pop in how many occurrences you want that to be for. So save and run. And you can see a little clock there tells me it's scheduled. And now I can see here on the 15th of June, we had 6 slots available. 2 people attended, 1 person did not attend, for a total of 9. It's a really quick way of viewing how much you're offering opposed to how much is actually being used. Now, the final part of this is this general practice workload tool along the top of the screen. Now, it's a very powerful tool in the sense that this will give you the information we've just gone through, how it will give you in a lot more detailed manner. So down the left of the screen, we have our different filters, so things we can choose from. By default, when you come in, it'll just give you data for a week. I have the option here on the bottom left for slot type. So if I give that a click, it's currently got everything selected. So let's untick it all from select all. And we'll select COVID. I can change the date range on this. So let's change the date range back to the 1st of April. And we'll apply. Now what this does on the right hand side of the screen is it takes all of our slot types of COVID and details back to us exactly how they were or weren't used. So I can see at the top here we've got our utilization and DNA rates. So it gives me a percentage. So we had 29 available and 14 were booked. And out of the 14 that were booked, 5 of them DNA'd. It also gives you how many patients had multiple appointments and multiple cancellations. And as I scroll down here, it gives you a weekly breakdown by day. And we can keep popping down. It breaks down all of the appointment data by age and gender, so you can see how they're being utilized. And from this information, I can see here that we're only using half of them appointments. So for my future planning, I could maybe offer a lot less appointments in that time. We can also pop down if we untick all of them. So for an asthma clinic, for example, if we apply that, that'd be quite handy to see how many of your asthma appointments are actually being used, as opposed to how many are being DNA'd or patients not turning up. So coming back into the appointment book there.
We're just having a few technical issues. Mikey is actually trying to sort this right now, so just bear with. Apologies for the internet issues we have there. So due to the unforeseen circumstances, I'm going to be continuing the session now, while Michael's had a few issues. So I shall share my screen and continue. So from the next part, Michael just covered our appointments, and we've just been going over the general practice workload tool. So from here, what we were just going to reiterate, because I know we've had a few questions on this. So when we're going into the general practice workload tool, we can use some of these sessions, some of the slot types to indicate where we're looking at our utilization and any forms of DNAs or what sort of bookings we've had, if we've had any available slots. So I'll just recap over the COVID slot type that we had in there, and then what I'm going to move on to is using duplicate users, dealing with duplicate patients in the registration workflow, which is something that we do get quite a lot of questions about when we're out and about on site. So just like I said, I will recap over the workload tool. So once we're in here, I'm going to pick a slot type like we had before. So if I deselect all the current slot types, and I'm going to just select the COVID one and put the date range from the beginning of March to see how utilized, from the 23rd of March to now, and see how utilized any of our COVID slot types are. So when we come into the workload tool, we can see a weekly breakdown with the different days and what's been available and booked, and so on throughout the week. So that is this week. Then we've got our other tables. So we've got any age or gender utilization to see what sort of target audience are booking the slot types. And we've got, let me just minimize that, which appointment session holder has been utilized for these types of slots. Now this is just an example for our COVID ones, but we've got all the different slot types you can have a look at. Any particular session holders that you want to narrow down and see if there's any availables, or if there's certain patterns with any types of slots that aren't being booked, or days. So that's a general practice workload tool. It is something that's already been created, and it's not. It's just takes away them having to use the appointment book reporting element to build on searches that are already here created in this workload tool. Okay, thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to the workflow manager section. And if I do that, we're going through to the EMIS ball and down to the workflow manager. So in here, we have the registration tab. So within the registration, we get we've got the different inboxes and outboxes to do with any patients that have been registered and going off to the health authority, and any amendments or particular deductions that are coming back in that need to be dealt with and actioned from the practice against the patients. But what we do get, sometimes we could get duplicate records. So within the duplicate records is when we have duplicate patients, and what we need to do is either merging the records. So it could be that we've had somebody who's been registered previously and have come back to the practice. So rather than when they've come back to the practice, the patient being selected off the spine and being merged together with the patient they've already got on the record on the system previously, they've been continued and added as a brand new patient. So then what that does is puts on an inactive record for the patient and an active record. So we've got two. So what we need to do is find them patients and merge them together so it's the one record. So to do this, in this duplicate record section, we can do this by add duplicate record task. And I need to find a patient. So please bear with my examples. I've completely forgotten out of my head here, so I'm just going to make two up for now for this example. If I just go ahead and say Smith, and I will merge two patients. These are all test patients, so it's not going to cause too much of an issue if I, in fact, let me see if I've got any mouses on here. So if I do a mini mouse. So I will merge Minnie Mouse and Daffy Duck. With your patients, you will have same name, date of birth, sex, and potentially home addresses could be different because they may have moved. But we have NHS number. They could be the same if one might be missing if you've gone through and not selected them from the spine. So you could have an NHS number on one patient and no NHS number on the other. But we should see similar information across there. It should just be the home address, or that could be different. So if I go to add task, this will add on the tasks for me to then have the opportunity to resolve the record and merge the two patients together. So what you can see here at the bottom, I've got my demographics. And if there were any outstanding tasks against one of the patients. So if there were any outstanding tasks against the patient, what we'd have to do is go and find that patient task to complete it or move it on to the patient we are wanting to keep before you're able to move it across and resolve the record. So with these, I'm going to go to resolve record. So now I get my two patients again, side by side. So what I can do, up on the ribbon section, we have all the different filters of the record. So if I go and have a look around and see what we've got on each patient. So these patients must be brand new. We've got nothing on these records. But what you would be looking for, you'd be looking for the more data-rich record. So you could have a patient that's got full detail, and then you might have one that's only just been added on the registration. But you can have a look around. You can add a comment. So if you were coming back to the task because you needed to find out some more information, you could add a comment. So then you can leave it there with a comment for anyone to not remove the task or complete it until whatever it is that you need to be dealing with. So the other option, we have resolve. So this is what we're going to do to resolve the record. So when I click on this, we have mark these two records as. So I've got duplicate records of the same person or distinct records of different people. So I'm going to select duplicate records of the same person, and the correct patient, I'm going to choose Minnie Mouse for this instance, and then resolve. So this will tell me underneath, click OK to attach the record for Daffy Duck to Minnie Mouse, and Daffy Duck will no longer have a record at this organisation. And again, I get my resolve duplicate records warning. So are you sure you want to keep Minnie Mouse as a true patient record? This will file the record for Daffy Duck and then as an attachment, and then delete this patient. So if I say yes, it's going to move across any family relationship links or other patients that are linked to Daffy Duck now over to Minnie Mouse. Okay, so that will leave me with just the one patient record now. So if I go to find Minnie Mouse again, and I go and have a look at the Documents tab, what I should see now is the attachment of Daffy Duck. So anything on here, if I need to pull things off for coding and add it onto Minnie Mouse because they've been seen as Daffy Duck, I'll need to go and attach the coding like I would if I was summarising a patient record. Okay. So for the merging of patient records, that's what we've that's how we deal with that. And it could be, like I say, if a new patient has come in and somebody previously had them registered. So that's all we have for the optimizing your configuration. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to open it up for the questioning, and I'm not sure if we might have Michael back as well for the questioning. If not, it will be with myself. So
I am back. Yeah, sorry. Technical issues. I apologise.
No problem. Do you want me to stop sharing my screen, Mikey?
Yeah, you can do. Go back over to sharing mine. There we go. So I think we have time for some Q&A, some questions there. If there was any asked throughout the session.
We do have some questions. I did manage to publish a few before I jumped on, so I'll bear with and we'll just look through some of the questions that we've got. Right, let me just start reading through some of these for you then, Mikey.
Okay, thanks.
So what we've got, we've got a question here for, is there a simple search you can do to find duplicate added patients already on the system so I can tidy up EMIS from duplicates from the past?
So the only real way to do so, in my opinion, would be if we went to our reporting tool into population reporting and we just ran a generic patient list, so a list of all our patients. And from there, we could create a report and sort that into alphabetical order, and then just skim through and check the details against all the patients. Because when they're created as duplicates, there's usually a slight difference. It could be something like a minus date of birth difference or something along them lines. That would be the only way of seeing them in that instance. So yeah, a list report of all your patients sorted by alphabetical, and then having to go through. There may be some wizardry you can run in Excel to identify some similarities, but through EMIS Web, unfortunately not in that instance.
Thank you. So we've got another question for, usually a GP leaving has thousands of tasks. Can these be bulk deleted?
And so with the tasks, the issue we have around the tasks is that you can batch complete, but only by date. So if we go into our workflow manager, we just go to global tasks, just so I've got some stuff. See, I can batch process these tasks here, but it is only by date. So can't batch complete by specific user. We could go into the specific user's tasks themselves by adding ourselves as a deputy. This one doesn't have any task. Let's try this one. And then if I was to batch complete these, on or after the 8th of July is the first one there. And then batch complete. If I go to global now, you'll see that all the tasks are still there. So we'd still need to add ourselves as a deputy. And then when we go to view the deputy's tasks in here, we can batch process. Hopefully that answers the question for you. So yeah, you can bulk complete them, but it's still important that you have them as a deputy. If a batch complete from global task, it's going to get rid of everything.
Brilliant. Is there a facility to move an equal number of patients to several GPs rather than the letter?
So the only way of transferring your patients to a different usual GP is via letters in the alphabet. So what you could do is pull a report of all the patients assigned to that usual GP, and then export that to Excel and try and split the numbers. So if you have 500 patients from letters A to Z, try and find that point where you want to transfer the patients, and then use the letters of the surname to transfer that specific amount. But that's the only way, is by surname initial.
Thank you. With duplicates, what happens if by some bizarre reason and in error you duplicate and then realise that you have made a mistake? Can it be undone? So
if what we're saying there is if we merge a patient on mistake and sort of can we take them apart again, you can. And so in your registration screen, where we have our duplicate records, you can see at the top there's an option here for view merged patients. If you give that a click, it'll show you a list of all the previous merges you've done, and you just click unmerge, and then it will unmerge them patients for you, separate them back up to exactly how they were.
Brilliant, thank you. So I'm just having a look at some of the other questions now on a screen that haven't been published.
Sure.
We've had a few questions regarding the workload tool being available for community organisations. It's not something that's currently available at the moment, but with them going on to, depending on what versions, it could, we'd have to double check, see if that could be something in the future that's available. Sorry, I'm just reading through some of these. Is there a way to move some patients to a different GP in a bulk action rather than all patients? If we wanted to move 300 out of 500 patients to a different GP, we've done a search to identify these patients, which are currently moving them individually, which has taken a lot of time. So again, that's sorry, I'll let you.
No, I think you're about to say the same thing. It harks back to the only way of bulk transferring patients in EMIS Web is by surname initial. So if they're not in a pattern of surnames, then no, you'd have to be like you're doing at the moment individually. If it's just random surname initials.
Thank you. So we've got one again for bulk transfer. I have a partner who has left and already bulk transferred his patients. However, there are 75 patients still showing on a report. 72 of these are showing as inactive some years ago, and 3 were contraceptive service patients, so I've dealt with those. Is there something else I need to check, as I can't bulk transfer them? If they've already left, they seem to be patients who were made inactive some time ago.
Okay, so my understanding with patients is if they're inactive, that they're not actually registered at the practice, so they shouldn't count towards the issue of removing the user from the system. We might need to come back to you on that one and get some more detail if possible. I don't know if that is possible, but yeah, that'd be ideal to have a bigger look into that one to see where that's coming from.
Thank you. So we've got one for, so if you can unmerge, will that include any data that had been added since the merge? How would it know what was for each person, each patient?
So when you merge the 2 patients, one of the patients is at the point of merge the correct patient. So you've told the system that's the right patient. When they merge, the correct patient, any data added to that record will stay with that patient when they unmerge. Okay, because you've told the system that's the correct patient.
Brilliant, thank you. So I think, unless there's any more questions, if we've not got to your question at the moment, it might be that we're going to look deeper into them, and we will come back to you with any of the questions that have been asked in this session. Also, I'd just like to mention that Michael's gone through here. We've done a bit of an insight and a bit of a taster of what you can do to help maximize your configuration, but this is something that as part of the training team we can there are further opportunities to maximize and adapt each practice. If it is something you want to look into further, please contact and get in touch for your account director to have a look at any training options if it has piqued an interest into developing your system a bit more. Thank you. So I just have a hang on, see if there's any more questions that come through. But like I say, if we haven't got to any that have come through now, we will come back to you. So I've just had a question for how do you know who your account director is, please? Your account director will be different depending on where you are in the country. So you should, if you want to just drop on the comment there whereabouts you are, and I will get back to you with who your account director is. Just a few more comments coming in. So we've got incompleted tasks. Is it best archiving these every so often as we have a lot sitting in completed tasks?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you archive them, it'll just take them out of workflow for you. Probably best to try and keep them nice and tidy. If you have a nice schedule set up, maybe every month or so when you want to archive them, you can do that. With the batch completion as well, if we pop back into here, batch processing, you can batch complete and archive from there as well. But yeah, essentially, if you can, then you can just archive them every so often. Just go into your completed and click on archive.
Brilliant, thank you. So we've got a few comments coming in saying thank you and the session was very useful. How will this recording be shared? So once all the information's been collated, anybody who's signed up for the session will get a copy of the recording emailed to them, as well as any correspondence regarding some of the questions or any further information that we need. If anybody who's asking for account director details, I will pop it in the comments to you. Or if you get it back on some of the questions, when you get the questions back, sorry. So there we are. I think that's all we have time for questions wise. So thank you very much. And like I said, you will get a copy of this recording on email once we've collated all the information, along with any questions that we're going to come back to you with. So thank you very much, and thank you, Mikey.
No, thank you, and thank you for putting up with the technical issues. I do apologise. It just shows what working from home we have to deal with at the moment. So thank you, Catherine, for stepping in as well.
Thank you.